Welcome to the mini podcast we are hosting today, and today we are going to talk about the Global Charter for Meaningful Engagement of People Living within cities. And we're going to have a series of mini discussions just talking on the different points and how we as the young people are living with NCDs and in the community for NCDs understood this, and how we're also going to share it with our networks. So without further ado, I'm joined here by quite the advocate, Mr. Dual Kevin, and I'm going to give him an opportunity to introduce himself, and then from there we'll talk a bit about the overview of the charter and what you understood by that. But before that, briefly, introduce yourself to us.
Yeah, very well, thank you. As you rightly mentioned, I'm Dual Kevin. I'm a programs officer at Plwncds, and Plwncds is a youth-led organization with the single most focus of addressing the burden of NCDs. I also double as secretary to the patient-led organization that is under Young Communicable Disease Alliance of Kenya, and I'm also a caregiver to my brother who is living with epilepsy. Yeah. Interesting.
So you've gone through the document, the Global Charter of Meaningful Engagement for People Living within cities. So what are some of the key pointers? So what is your general feeling? Let's start from there. What is the general feeling of the document, and then we'll go into a bit of the details of what you understood about it.
Okay, well, what I have to mention first is that right now NCDs are on the upward trend. And recognizing that right now NCDs are the leading killer disease right now in Kenya or even globally, then there's a need for us to engage or meaningfully engage those who are living with NCD or even their caregivers. So when you recognize that people living with NCDs are not just recipients of services, but they are also co-creators of solutions, so that we meaningfully engage them in whatever we do, so that we don't leave them behind. And also with the understanding that what we call the Leave No One Behind call, the clarion call to leave no one behind, which is embedded in our Sustainable Development Goals, what we call the transformative promise or the 2030 agenda. So I think the Global Charter for Meaningful Involvement of Persons Living the NCD recognizes that we need to bring this forward to the decision-making table. Nothing without us, of course without us. So that is the general view of the charter.
So nothing about us without us is really where the conversation is going. And so I think the next question would be then, so this document is an 8-page packed document, and it has maybe 3 or 4 components of the document. So we have the overview, and then we have the 6 pointers on meaningful engagement, and then we have the strategies for implementing those areas of meaningful engagement. So I guess my question then would be, could we talk a bit about those areas of meaningful engagement, and also how those documents flow, and sort of what you understood with some of those key components. So maybe we start with the very first part of the document, which really are about some 6 key pointers on meaningful engagement and some of the things that you saw there.
Okay, well, first of all, I have to recognize that the Global Charter for Meaningful Engagement of Persons or People living with NCD is kind of, for lack of a better term, brainchild of the Global NCD Alliance. And it unlocks the value of lived experience. Recognize that communities, when they are involved, of course, it's more likely lead to maybe policies are relevant, sustainable, and also can lead to a meaningful outcome for the persons living in the city. It also it's a document that rallies all actors, that is the government, institution, international institutions, and even the CSOs, the private sector, to to just ensure that persons living within cities are being brought to the decision table. And also, what I've mentioned, a while earlier, that the rallying call is leaving no one behind. So we're looking forward to ensuring that every other person is involved. So that is the transformative promise of the 2030 agenda I was talking about. And also call the organization, which I mentioned, institutions, to publicly endorse this document, but also ensuring that after endorsing, it's not about just endorsing the document, it's about also taking action. What are the core strategies that you're going to put in place to ensure that people living within cities are engaged? But also, after taking action, are you able to track progress? Because again, just taking action, if you can't measure whatever you're doing, then we would say that there's no progress there. So you must measure if there's progress.
So, what is meaningful involvement? What does this term really mean?
Yeah, meaningful involvement, according to the document or the Global Charter for Meaningful Involvement of Persons Living in the MCDs, talks about recognizing the value of lived experience and that of community. I would also say it recognizes that also we have to avoid tokenism and also embrace the kind of reciprocal relationships between institutions and also the persons living within cities. Meaningful involvement also would mean us putting people at the center and not letting people live within cities to be at the periphery while we are the people fronting all these decisions. It's also about recognizing the value of persons living within cities in decision making and ensuring that also persons living within cities are benefiting from the experience and being engaged.
All right. So there is a very big conversation now on principles of meaningful involvement, and we will get to talk about them in detail once we get into the other sessions. But we could highlight some of them and our understanding of some of them. So, what are some of them, and what's your understanding of some of those highlights?
Okay, well, the principles of meaningful involvement are 5. One of them is human right-based approach, or right-based approach. We can also talk about people being at the center, people-centeredness. We can also talk about respect and dignity. And while engaging people living within cities, or even their caregivers, then there must be some sort of respect and dignity. Also equity, and the 5th one would be social participation, but I know these are things that are going to be explained in detail.
Yeah, okay, I think I'll sort of now come to a close, and at the close we're going to really talk about summaries. You've sort of taken us through a rough overview of what the document is, and so in a nutshell, how do you summarize meaningful engagement, and then we'll sort of proceed from there.
Yeah, well, I would summarize this document this way, of course.
And why is it important? I think it is the other question as we summarize.
Why it's important, and also how I would summarize the document. For me, I would say the Global Charter for Meaningful Involvement of People Living Within Cities recognizes that when people are involved, or when these people living within cities and their caregivers or when the community are involved, there's more likely for us to have policies, programs, and services that are more relevant, services that are more scalable and sustainable in the long run. But again, it's important because the Global Charter recognizes their value, and that gives them a sense of purpose. The persons living within cities and also their caregivers. So we recognize the importance of every other person that is being involved, their value, and I think that's why the Charter comes in handy to help in revolutionizing advocacy in cities.
All right, thank you very much. It was nice having you on this short discussion about this document. And thank you very much for your insights and deep understanding of the document.
Now that was incredible. Thank you for listening in. Share this with your networks and follow us on all social media at Storylink and at NCD Champions. See you on the next one.